Hey guys, welcome to JReviews. I am Iceman, and the game covered today is Terminator Resistance. Terminator Resistance is a first-person shooter with RPG elements, developed by Teon and published by Reef Entertainment, and released in November of 2019. It is set within the future war as depicted in the films Terminator and Terminator 2. However, much in the way as how the game Alien Isolation works, of heavily taking from the first Alien film, Terminator Resistance primarily takes from the first Terminator film. It does this via the visuals, music, setting, locations, and of how the forces of Skynet and the human resistance forces look. As a child, the first Terminator film was the first in the film series that I watched, and it was the Future War segments in particular that resonated greatly for me. I recall strongly envisioning of what it would be like to be in that war, and had long looked for a video game set within that. To that end, this game delivers in full, and I'll say straight away that if you, like me, prefer the first film over the second one, due to its horror elements and music, then this game is for you. From the bleak setting where humanity is within an inch of being wiped out forever by a seemingly impossible force to defeat, and with the infiltrator Terminators being the new line of enemy that can easily slip into resistance compounds undetected, if not save for dogs, who have an innate sixth sense that they are not what they appear. These all go together as part of the future war. The Terminator franchise itself began in 1984 with the release of the first film, which went for a horror slasher flick style, and then received a sequel in 1991 which went for a somewhat lighter tone and far more of an action focus. These would be the only films in the franchise directed by James Cameron, and whilst numerous sequels would follow in later decades, none of the later films hold a candle to the original two. Video games wise, there has been a sea of Terminator games, going all the way back to the late 80s, though most of them were either centered around the second or later films. Very few focused on the first, and even fewer focused on the future war. The future war setting for both the films and this game has the military defense network Skynet launch a nuclear holocaust referred to as Judgment Day in August 29th of 1997, with much of the world being quickly reduced to rubble, with only a few scant survivors banding together under the leadership of John Connor in a resistance against the machines. The game is set 30 years into that war, with you in the shoes of the resistance soldier Jacob Rivers, who is the last survivor of an infiltrator attack on his unit. Initially, his task is to locate the resistance and pass on his intel regarding the new infiltrator class of Terminator, and later the game moves onto taking on Skynet's forces. Narrative to the game is told to you via a mix of videos and in-game cutscenes. The game is very dialogue heavy, so you will be seeing a lot of in-game dialogue between characters. The general feel to this game is a mix of Fallout and modern first-person shooter style stuff. More than anything else is the Fallout feel with the destroyed landscapes, with much of the rest being from the first Terminator film as mentioned. From the look of the environments, the plasma gunfire, to the music, it all gives you a strong sense of that first film in how the future war looked and sounded. The graphics of this game are superb. Visually, they completely nail the look of the future war depicted in the films, and the various environments you encounter all look quite good. So overall, on the appearance side of things, I would say that they completely nailed it, as visually it looks exactly like how the world looked in the films. Music is an area of this game that really shines. Whilst from time to time you'll hear familiar tunes from the films, for the most part what you'll be hearing is heavily inspired by the music of that first film, with its noir style. When moving about the human hideouts and the resistance bases, familiar music plays of a grim setting where humans live in squalor conditions. When in battle, thrilling horror style music plays, instilling a sense of dread, again fully inspired by that of the first film. Whilst it's not music that you would put in a playlist, it is truly great stuff. My hat's off to the devs on it, as they did a great job. And in particular, the music that plays in the Infiltrator DLC totally nails that Terminator vibe of walking around as an actual Terminator, and I'll be touching much more on that later on. Gameplay overall is quite varied. In the hideouts and resistance bases, you can travel around and talk to people with a conversation tree of sorts, and where choices in how you choose to respond will have consequences in how that person perceives you, as well as how they'll respond later. You can purchase items from vendors, which is essential in keeping good equipment, and you can search for items, unlock doors, if you have the prerequisite skill levels. The mission levels are a varied bunch. Some go for a completely linear style approach, with you following troops into battle against the machines. Others, however, go the complete opposite, with you being dropped into a semi-open world, with you free to go where you like. Here, the exploration is immensely beneficial, with many houses containing items, weapons, and useful trade resources. Battles in these levels requires a strategic approach, as all the enemies require different strategies to defeat them without incurring too much damage. I will say that the open levels are where the game is at its most fun, as you can take them at your own pace and explore to your heart's content. The battles in them also have far more options, and those segments feature several Skynet turret bases that are completely optional but provide for some damn fine stealth gameplay. I had an absolute blast in those. A word of warning though, that some of them can be quite time consuming to get through. Now, if you recall my mention of RPG elements earlier, you gain experience points via both completion of quest objectives and via the defeating of enemies. As with most RPGs, when you acquire enough XP, you level up and gain 1 point to use towards skills. This is another well-done aspect to the game, as all of the skills provides major benefits as you progress through the game, and every single one of them is useful. From sneaking, which obviously makes you harder to detect and allows for marking of enemies, weapon skills, which improves damage from your weapons and later gives you access to vastly better level 2 plasma weaponry, crafting, which allows you to produce various equipment, hacking, which obviously allows you to hack computers, lockpicking, which allows you to lockpick, obviously, locks from doors and chests and things, explosives allows disarming of laser explosive traps and later rearming of them. Backpack improves your overall inventory storage, and toughness reduces the damage that you receive. The only skill here which is kinda pointless is the fast learning skill. It increases the amount of XP that you receive from combat, but I found it to be the least useful skill, as by the end of the game you'll be max level regardless. Enemy variety is quite varied. You have your usual style enemies present in the films, like the T-800 Terminators, who early on can be quite difficult to deal with, but once you have some decent weaponry, they're not too bad. The Hunter-Killer tanks, who are massive challenges to take down. Aerial HK ships, for the most part you won't have to fight, as long as you stay out of their visual sight range, but otherwise they can be quite difficult to take down, and absolutely impossible to take out if you don't have level 2 weaponry. Much later on in the game, you start encountering infiltrators, who can take an immense amount of firepower to take down and are a mega challenge regardless of your weaponry. On the easier end, you have the Silverfish, who are robots that burrow underground and then come up and spin fast towards you. Fast reflexes are required to take them out quickly, as they otherwise will explode on contact with you, which made for several early deaths in my playthrough. On their own, they're completely fine, but in packs they can be very difficult. Next up is the aerial robots, which come in several varieties, but are relatively easy to take out. Spider tanks are next up. For the most part, these are easy to take out as long as you have cover within reach. If not, then you're in for a world of hurt. And there's many more other types of enemies that you encounter throughout the game. Multiplayer wise, there is no multiplayer present for this game, as of the time of this review. Single player all the way with this one. On the subject of bugs, there were some present, and all were concerning reloading after getting killed. On several occasions, the game crashed after getting killed and needing to reload. Annoying, but it only occurred a few times. I can't recall witnessing any other bugs in my playthrough. And this takes us on to the DLC and expansion side of things. DLC and expansions wise, as of the time of this review, there are 2 DLCs available for the game. Infiltrator Mode, which was a free DLC released in November of 2020, and Annihilation Line, which came out on the 10th of December 2021. Infiltrator mode is a prequel set prior to the events of the main game. It places you in the metal feet of a T-800 infiltrator tasked with clearing the area of scavengers and resistance forces, though your main goal is to locate the primary TechCom base and the necessary access codes to get inside, so as to terminate an officer known as Daniel Ramirez. Gameplay in this DLC is quite different to the main game, as you cannot save your game at all, meaning the death equals a reset back to the very beginning. In addition, health restoratives are few and far between, and you start off with no weapons at all, so this makes for an extremely difficult mission to complete. The other big gameplay change is the acquiring of intel, which reveals locations of interest and eventually gets you the codes you need to enter the TechCom base. Being able to play as an infiltrator Terminator in first-person view was really damn awesome. Seeing things from the infrared vision that the Terminator sees things as, plus as being a bad guy for a change, was really fun, especially with the music that goes with it that really puts you in the shoes of that Terminator. The negative is that unlike how Terminators generally behave of going in all guns blazing, if you try to play that way in this DLC, you will get completely slaughtered in the later parts. So going in far more stealthy is highly recommended. Beyond that, it's a great DLC, if a little short. It took me around 3 hours to complete, though the game said it should take about 45 minutes. So depending on the difficulty mode that you select, that is going to play a major factor in the length of how long it will take you to get through it. A second DLC, Annihilation Line, follows a very similar level style to that of the main campaign, with a mixture of linear and open levels. Gameplay is essentially the same as the main game, so if you enjoyed the style of the main game, then expect more of that here. Annihilation Line is a side story set midway through the main campaign, just after the first infiltrator is defeated and captured. Again, you're in control of Jacob Rivers, who has been ordered by John Connor to go along with Carl Reese, plus several other operatives to cross the Annihilation Line. The reasons for this are not revealed immediately, but all I'll say is that it involves rescuing a set of prisoners. Difficulty is moderate, and the exploration side of things is quite fun as always. It has some good story links to the first Terminator film in addition, so that is another great aspect. I recommend it, great stuff overall, though it would have been good if it were a bit longer. An extra level or two would have been good. Overall, Terminator Resistance is an excellent game and my personal favourite video game in the Terminator franchise. For others, I would say that it depends on which is your favourite Terminator film. If you're like me and the first is your favourite and you've had a fascination with the future war setting, then this game should be right up your alley. Whereas if either you prefer the second or later films, or you have no interest in the Terminator franchise at all, then your enjoyment level obviously is going to be much lower. In either case, I would highly recommend this game as it has several great aspects to it, and it does not play like most first-person shooters. There is no fate but what we make, and the devs did great on this one. And that concludes my review of Terminator Resistance. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more videos in this series, be sure to hit the subscribe channel and also just check out my channel for further videos. You'll also find out what else is available. And with that, this is Iceman of JReviews signing out. Guys, have a good one.